That one flex cost him 10 years, his entire crew, and the personal grudge from the god of the sea. This is the story of the smartest man in Greece, who never once in his life resisted an opportunity to show off. This is the Odyssey. Buckle up. About 2,800 years ago, a blind poet named Homer wrote two massive epics, presumably with no editor and zero word count limit. The first, the Iliad, covers the 10-year Trojan War, which ended because one guy, Odysseus, had the bright idea to hide an army inside a wooden horse. Genuinely brilliant, we'll give him that one. The second epic, the Odyssey, is about what happened after Odysseus won the war. It took him another 10 years to get home. Not because the trip was far, because everything that could possibly go wrong did. Usually because of his own ego. Waiting at home the entire time, his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus, who Odysseus left as a literal infant and would come home to find as a grown man. Smooth. This is that story. Try to keep up. The man cannot stay out of trouble for more than one paragraph. Troy destroyed. Mission complete. Odysseus and his fleet finally set sail home, probably feeling pretty good about themselves. First stop is Mara, where instead of just grabbing supplies and leaving like normal people, his crew decided to raid the entire town. The Ciconians, who had fought for Troy and were understandably not thrilled to see them, fought back and sent the Greeks running back to their ships. Day one of the trip home, off to a great start. Then a storm blew them straight to the island of the Lotus Eaters, because of course it did. The locals offered them fruit. Friendly, right? Wrong. One bite of this fruit and you forget your entire life, your family, your name, your purpose, and you just want to stay on the island and eat fruit forever. Several of Odysseus' men took the bait immediately, because apparently nobody on this crew has ever heard of "don't eat mysterious food from strangers." Odysseus, to his credit, dragged his now blissfully stoned crew back onto the ships by force. One problem solved, several hundred more to go. Running low on supplies, they land on an island and spot a cave full of cheese and meat. Naturally, they just walk in and start eating someone else's food. Bold strategy. Turns out, the cave belongs to Polyphemus, a cyclops, son of Poseidon, and a guy with significant anger management issues. He blocks the only exit with a boulder and starts eating two of Odysseus' men per meal. Morning and night, like clockwork. The world's worst Airbnb host. Odysseus, unable to fight a giant directly, does what he does best: lies. He gets Polyphemus drunk, tells him his name is Nobody, waits for him to pass out, and rams a sharpened stake into his one eye. Solid plan. Genuinely impressive improvisation. Polyphemus screams in agony. The other Cyclopes show up, asking who's attacking him, and he yells, "Nobody is killing me!" And they just leave. Nobody questions this. Greek mythology, everyone. The next morning, Odysseus and his men strap themselves to the underbellies of Polyphemus' sheep and walk right out, past the blind giant. Flawless. Truly elite-level escape plan. And then, as they're sailing away, completely safe, Odysseus decides this is the moment to turn around and scream his actual name at the giant he just blinded. Because apparently, an anonymous victory wasn't satisfying enough. He needed the credit. Polyphemus tells his dad. His dad is Poseidon, god of the sea, the exact substance Odysseus needs to cross to get home. Poseidon curses him on the spot. 10 years of wandering, and the death of every man under his command. All because Odysseus couldn't resist a victory lap. Completely unaware he's now on a god's personal hit list, Odysseus reaches King Aeolus, who hands him a magic bag containing all the winds. Use it correctly, and it sails you straight home. One job: don't open the bag. Ithaca is literally in sight, and then his crew, convinced there's gold inside, opens the bag while he's asleep. Every wind in existence explodes out at once and blows them all the way back to where they started. Aeolus takes one look at this disaster and says in essence, "Yeah, no, you're cursed, get out of my house," and refuses to help again. Next stop, Laestrygonia, land of cannibal giants, because the universe has decided this trip needs more giants. The Laestrygonians smash nearly Odysseus' entire fleet with boulders. He escapes with exactly one ship. One. Out of what started as a small fleet. Down to a single ship, they land on the island of Circe, a witch who welcomes Odysseus' men with a lovely dinner that turns them all into pigs, as one does. One guy escapes the spell and runs to warn Odysseus, who marches off to confront her, but gets intercepted by Hermes, who hands him a magic herb so the food won't affect him. Odysseus eats Circe's enchanted meal, shrugs it off, pulls his sword, and forces her to turn his men back into men. Circe's response to nearly being murdered, she's into it. Odysseus stays for an entire year, and they have a son together. His wife back home, weaving and unweaving the same blanket for years, blissfully unaware. We'll come back to that. Eventually Circe sends him off with some homework. Before going home, visit the underworld. Casual. Odysseus sails to the edge of the map and chats with dead people, including the prophet Tiresias, who gives him exactly one rule. Do not, under any circumstances, touch the sacred cattle of the sun god Helios. One rule. Remember this rule. It will not be followed. Next up, the Sirens, whose song is so beautiful, it makes sailors crash their ships and die. Odysseus, ever the overachiever, decides he personally wants to hear the song and survive. So he has his men plug their ears with wax, tie him to the mast, and ignore him no matter what he says. The song hits. Odysseus loses it, begging to be untied. And his men, deaf and unmoved, just keep rowing. He survives. First man in history to hear the sirens and live. The Sirens, apparently contractually obligated to die if a mortal resists them, throw themselves into the sea. Bold professional commitment to a job that clearly wasn't working out anyway. Next, pick your poison. A six-headed monster named Scylla or a whirlpool named Charybdis that eats entire ships. Odysseus picks Scylla on the logic of lose a few guys instead of everyone. 6 heads, 6 men, gone in seconds. Tragic. Also, weirdly, the best option available. Then they land on Thrinacia, home of the sacred cattle Tiresias specifically told them not to touch. A storm traps them there for almost a month. The crew gets hungry, really hungry. And while Odysseus is asleep, one job guys, they kill and eat the cattle. Zeus finds out. Zeus is furious. Zeus throws a thunderbolt at the ship and kills literally everyone except Odysseus, exactly as Poseidon promised back when this whole curse started. The lose your entire crew part of the curse officially complete. Odysseus drifts alone for 9 days and washes up on Calypso's island. She rescues him, falls for him, and offers him eternal life and a permanent vacation if he'll just stay forever. Most men would consider this a win. Odysseus says no. He wants to go home to his wife. Respect. Calypso, less impressed by his loyalty, keeps him there for 7 years anyway, while he sits on the beach every night, crying about a woman he hasn't seen in over a decade. Eventually, Athena gets tired of watching this and convinces Zeus to order his release. Calypso, begrudgingly, helps him build a raft. Poseidon, still holding a grudge, as gods do, immediately destroys it with a storm. Odysseus swims to Scheria, because apparently nothing in the story is allowed to be easy. He washes up naked on a beach, where Princess Nausicaa finds him, and against every instinct a reasonable person would have, decides to help instead of run. She brings him to her parents, who throw a feast, where a bard sings a song about the Trojan War, and Odysseus, the actual guy who was there, starts crying at his own highlight reel. Eventually, he reveals who he is. The king is suitably impressed, and they send him home with a ship full of treasure. After everything, cyclopes, witches, gods, sea monsters, Odysseus' final obstacle is apparently emotional vulnerability at a karaoke night. 20 years after leaving for Troy, Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, and his house is a disaster. A crowd of suitors has moved in, eaten his food, wearing his clothes, and pressuring his wife to remarry, all convinced he's dead. Penelope, meanwhile, has spent 3 years stalling them by weaving a burial shroud during the day and secretly unraveling it every night. The most elaborate, still working on it, excuse in recorded history. It finally got found out. Athena disguises Odysseus as an old beggar so he can sneak into his own home like a stranger. He reconnects with his loyal servant Eumaeus, then his son Telemachus, who's grown into an adult Odysseus has basically never met. Father and son reunite in tears. Sweet moment, mostly overshadowed by the fact there's still a house full of guys to deal with. Penelope, in one last move, announces a competition. Whoever can string Odysseus' old bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads gets to marry her. Every suitor tries, every suitor fails. Presumably while Odysseus, disguised as a beggar in the corner, watches and judges silently. Then he asks for a turn. The room laughs. He strings the bow effortlessly and fires the arrow clean through all 12 axes without blinking. The laughing stops immediately. Odysseus turns the bow on the suitors. They scramble for weapons that, surprise, Telemachus had already hidden. What follows is 20 years of pent-up rage, expressed entirely through archery and improvised home defense violence. Every single suitor, gone. With the house finally suitor-free, Penelope embraces her husband after 20 years apart. War, monsters, a witch, a nymph, and one extremely unnecessary victory shout at a Cyclops later. She asks him, simply, where he's been all this time. Odysseus smiled, exhausted, and said the only thing he could, where do I begin? Honestly, fair question. We just spent 12 minutes on it and barely scratched the surface.